and welcome to week 6 of the Being Your Best You Mindfulness Education series. And once again, this series has been made possible by the Joy Fund here at Unity Health Toronto, which I am very grateful for. Now, last week we did a bit of a summary of the lessons up until now, and so if you missed that, they are available on YouTube and Vimeo under the channel with my name _MD. And let us take a nice quiet moment for ourselves. So begin by choosing a resting position where you feel comfortable, one that will allow you to let go of any holding or tension. Notice the contact of your body with the surface that is supporting you, the quality of that support. Beginning to bring awareness to any sensations that may be arising in your body. As things arise, see if you can allow them to be, to stay with them, not necessarily changing anything, but being an observer, curiously following whatever path your experiences want to take you today. If there is discomfort, restlessness, simply acknowledging these with gentleness from a place of compassion for yourself, if you are able. And if you're not able, that's okay too. Just continuing to notice whatever is tugging at your attention. Who in you might be asking for care today? And perhaps today you can extend some kindness to the parts of you that are indicating some need, that may be asking to be listened to. And as we draw this very brief meditation to a close, keeping in mind that as you continue on this path to understand yourself better, to learn to see yourself through compassionate eyes, you become more whole, more integrated, and more resilient in your capacity to live fully in the present. And with that, why don't we just take a gentle breath as we launch into the lesson or the didactic portion for today. Now, today I thought, since last week was a bit of a summary session, today I want to shift gears slightly and talk a bit about positive psychology. So in the chat, I've dropped in a resource. Usually I'll do them as TED Talks, just I think it's um, a neat way to have some interaction with some great speakers. But today I will be drawing from the work of Sean Achor. His first name is S-E-A-N and last name is A-C-H-O-R. And he gave this fairly entertaining talk about happiness in work, or the secret to happiness in work. Now, he begins by talking, but giving some personal anecdotes. But the main theme that he talks about is this idea that we live in this culture of never enough, which is a very, very negative reference point for people to live by. And in his words, he says that we are operating on the wrong formula of, if I work harder, I'll be more successful. And if I'm more successful, then I'll be happier. So he really spends a lot of time talking about how this formula is scientifically broken and backwards for a couple of different reasons. First of all, what he explains is that every time, if you have this model, if I do this, then I'll be more happy, is that every time your brain has a success, you just start shifting that goal the goalpost of what success actually looks like. It just keeps moving. So if you've done this, oh, I succeeded in this, but then if I do this, so it just keeps being this unending path where your brain never gets to success, where nothing you ever do is enough. And again, so that's how it's a very negative reference point, because it's a reference point that continues to move. There's no endpoint. And what he explains is that, so the core, the reason this is so problematic is that our brains actually work in the opposite. So his work focuses on raising someone's level of positivity in the present. And he calls this the happiness advantage, where our brains, if you are able to be more in the present and not in this future, if I do this in the future, then I will be happy. You really are staying present, which is what we're working on in this practice that we're developing of our mindfulness meditation, is that we are really truly trying to stay present with what is happening right now. And you may notice that again, when you're present, your prefrontal cortex is firing nicely, it's integrating your experience, that you're much more open, and usually you feel pretty calm and happy. Now, he explains that the brain, also, when we are able to stay in this more of a happy place, more present, we perform significantly better than when we are feeling negative or even neutral or even more stressed. And some of the data that he talks about has shown us that there's actually a rise in intelligence. So again, because we're operating where this is really the command center, the prefrontal cortex is online. And for those who may have missed previous sessions, I'm talking about Dr. Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain. And the content we're talking about is from a social psychologist named Sean Achor. And so Sean Achor talks about how when we are a little more in this positive place in the present, there's actually a rise in intelligence, a rise in creativity and energy levels. We're more productive and resilient. There's less burnout. There's less turnover in workplace environments. And interestingly, for physicians, we're actually 19% better at a correct diagnosis when we are able to stay more in this present positive place. So mindfulness is really a means, a way to reverse this formula of, instead of being, if I'm more successful, then I'll be happier, to one where if I stay present, I'm positive in the present, then our brains actually work more successfully and we're able to be better at work, working faster and more intelligently. And another thing he adds during his talk, he presents towards the end a number of different things that have been shown in the research that help us to be a little more present, or be a little more positive. He also talks about how when we are feeding our systems negative news all the time or negative events. So for example, if you're constantly checking what's happening in the news, a negative news sells more. So there is a bit of a bias towards disaster being shown on the news because it gets better ratings. And so to keep that in mind when you're also being a consumer of media, of just what is being presented, may not actually be representative of what's happening. Now, right now we're in the middle of a pandemic and there's a lot of negative things happening. But what Sean Achor talks a lot about is when you feed your system negative things on a regular basis, your brain is believing or is scanning constantly for something negative. Now, negative events, we do have a bias to remembering negative events more strongly because it does help us to ensure our survival. If your brain remembers that when you did that thing, something bad happened, it's actually worthwhile remembering so that you don't repeat that same thing again. But we do need to work towards balancing out a lot of this negative bias in our systems with more positive so that our brains get better at scanning for the positives. And one of the things that he talks about are gratitude practices, journaling, for example. And so in this moment right now, I'd like you to think about one thing that either happened in your week or maybe happened today that either brought a smile to your face, warmed your heart, or something that you're feeling grateful for. And you may notice that as you do this, you feel a change in your system. Because every time we recall something that is positive, that brings a smile to our face, that we feel grateful for, our systems actually relive it. And that's, that neural pathway in a sense gets strengthened again. The recall actually strengthens that neural pathway. And so when doing things like journaling about something that's positive, often I ask my patients, for example, to do a gratitude practice each day where they think about three things that they are grateful for, or they start their day with something that brings a smile to their face so that their systems can sort of relive this moment of positivity. And as you do that more, it does allow your system to start to scan for the positive in your environment. You begin to see that there's, a beautiful blue sky. You really begin to notice these things. And again, that actually also helps you be more present, where you notice the beautiful color of the fall leaves, the way they swirl beautifully in the wind. Um, and so the homework I would like to assign for this coming week is a gratitude practice where each day, if you can remember, or even at the end of the day at some point, just to think about something that's brought a smile to your face that you're grateful for, and really feel that experience in the present. And what I also like about this practice is that it also is a way to ground back into your body in the present. You can really feel the warmth. You can feel, and as you do that, you have the opportunity to return to having this prefrontal cortex really being online and begin to squirt some, soothing neurotransmitters down to the rest of the system to let your system know that, you're capable. We can handle the day. Um, and again, it's just such a nice grounding practice that's so simple. And if any of you work in group settings where you work as a team, it is something that's nice also to do at the beginning of a meeting, the beginning of a huddle, where everyone takes a moment and the guidance is, let's take a moment just to think about each one of us something that brought a smile to our face or that we're feeling grateful for. And as each individual names it in a circle, you'll find that there's this moment of connection between everyone participating, even if those who, and I always give the option for people to pass. But it is this moment where you also are able to um, experience the joy of another. And in that sense, you experience the joy yourself as people share these often very beautiful moments that they're thinking about. And so that will be the homework for this week. And in closing, I invite you once again to soften your gaze or close your eyes. And in echoing this theme of gratitude for today, this theme of remembering the little positives that are still out there during this challenging time, thinking about a moment that warmed your heart and noticing the sensations that it brings up in your system, in your body, and allowing yourself just to linger in the joy and the love you may have felt, and extending a bit of gratitude to yourself for once again taking the time today to allow yourself to have this much needed pause. And I thank everyone again for attending. And I will stop the recording now.